Hello, this is Global Matters. On this program, we'll bring to you global issues that shape the world, issues of international and global agenda that determine our national and common interests, especially the interests around Africa and indeed Nigeria. My name is Tunde Labi, and it's great to have you join us on the program today. Thank you for your time, and thank God it's another Friday. On the program today, we're taking a look at the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the West African sub-region, the worsening insecurity, trans-border activities, and the political uncertainty in some countries, including Chad, West Central issues, where the issues focused on at the first 2021 ordinary session of the ECOWAS Parliament, which just ended in Abuja. The parliamentarians commended the suspension of Mali from sub-region blocs, saying that the idea of a military coup in the region should not be entertained. Mali is in the news for what many critics describe as an attempt to derule democracy in the Sahel and West African sub-region. For the second time in 9 months, the country's military have taken over power, with the latest culminating in the detention of interim President Banda and Prime Minister Mokhtar Ould. Colonel Assimi Goïta, the military leader behind both coups, emerged the new interim Prime Minister. The coup, however, occurred after a cabinet reshuffle in which 2 officers lost their posts without what the military consider as not carrying them along. Well, what that means, we don't know. And this has come 9 months after the international community condemned the toppling of former President Ibrahim Keita, whose predecessor was also overthrown after impeaching in 2012. Besides the political instability in Mali, Chad is also another country in the region. Both international and regional governments are watching to see how the transitional government will ensure a civil handover of power within a year to a democratic government. This comes after a military takeover in April in Niger Republic. A military takeover was also averted in March this year, leaving pundits to wonder if there is a new resurgence of military coup in the sub-region that is grappling with insecurity, porous border controls, terrorism, poverty, rising unemployment figure, and total state of derailment in terms of what they consider as democracy. But the sub-region is home to 30% of global poor, and despite intervention of sub-regional bodies, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, and other international donors, we still have the prevalence of economic despondency in the region and in the area. And the African Union, the development gap remains worrisome. So, at the just concluded first ordinary session of ECOWAS Parliament, the lawmakers discussed extensively fundamental issues that border on the region's advancement. And these are some of the issues we'll be taking on the program today. On to this edition, which will make some attempts to seek answers to the political challenges and perhaps solutions to the political instability and governance challenges in the sub-region, evaluate the reasons behind the military incursion and interference in governance, how countries can utilize peer review mechanism to enhance performance, what should be the priority of member countries in the face of several contending issues, what are the limitations of the ECOWAS Parliament, what is their power, what is their strength, where they condemn what happened in Mali, why can't they condemn what happened in Chad? After all, it's the same military takeover. Joining us today to look at these issues are 2 delegates in the ECOWAS Parliament, a Nigerian delegate, Honorable Bamidele Salam, a Nigerian delegate and a member of the Nigerian House of Representatives, and Senator Kepe Lambert, the Liberian delegate on the ECOWAS Parliament. Another program today will be taking a look at instability in West African sub-region. It's going to be another whole way. I've got my guests in the studio, and we'll come back after this break. The world has become more connected than ever before. Every continent, color, race, language, and religion, even government, move towards common goals. We now live in a global village. Here on this program, we'll bring you global issues to shape our world.
Government can do a lot with tax revenues collected for health and education.
The role of the European Union is to accompany a partner, that is Nigeria, in offering our lessons learned to see whether together we can improve that situation.
The emphasis on education, on vocational training, on the development of entrepreneurship is absolutely critical to its democracy.
The Nigerian government, we would ask them to to follow up the investigations that we have had, the evidence that we have gathered, and ultimately we made a number of recommendations.
As we travel the world, we explore these issues of international and diplomatic relevance. Indeed, the global agenda that determine our national and common interests. With me, Tunde Alabi, live on AIT. The world has become more connected than ever before. Every continent, color, race, language, and religion, even government, move towards common goals. We now live in a global village. Here on this program, we'll bring you global issues that shape our world.
Government can do a lot with tax revenues collected for health and education.
The role of the European Union is to accompany a partner, that is Nigeria, in offering our lessons learned to see whether together we can improve that situation.
The emphasis on education, on vocational training, on the development of entrepreneurship is absolutely critical to its democracy.
The Nigerian government, we would ask them to follow up the investigations that we have had, the evidence that we have gathered, and ultimately we made a number of recommendations.
As we travel the world, we explore these issues of international and diplomatic relevance. Indeed, the global agenda that determine our national and common interests. With me, Tunde Alabi, live on AIT. All right, thank you for taking the time to join us on the program today. We're looking at instability in West African sub-region. My guest in the program today is joining us to look at this issue, Honorable Bamdele Salam, the Nigerian delegate at the ongoing ECOWAS Parliament, and Senator Kepe Lambert, also delegate at the ECOWAS Parliament and the Liberian delegate. Let's quickly update you that the ECOWAS Parliament is still ongoing. It has not ended. And I have my guest live in the studio joining us to take a look at, to review the situation in the sub-region, instability, insecurity, coup, and why do we have all these problems and where do we go? Honorable Bamdele Salam, thank you for taking the time to join us on the program today.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, viewers at home.
Honorable Lambert, thank you for Senator Lambert, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let me start with you, Honorable Bamdele. You had a session where you reviewed what is happening in the sub-region, the insecurity, economic situation. You spoke about Mali, where Mali was suspended. Can you quickly take us through the concern of the ECOWAS Parliament in terms of what is going on in the sub-region?
Yes, at every edition of the session of the Parliament, we take country reports, where countries come to give reports on the state of affairs in each of those countries. And broadly speaking, you know, the reports take charge of security situations, economic situations, issues on health, issues on education, issues on the environment, and other issues that that are globally of concern to all countries of the world. So in this particular session, there were reports from all the countries making up the sub-region, and the most dominant of the issues in those reports are the issues of insecurity, as well as the economic hardships occasioned especially or aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Insecurity, for instance, has been a major issue in most of the West African countries, and especially in our own country, Nigeria, even though the situations appear similar from the trend of the report that we got. You had almost all the countries having cases of herders, farmers clashes, terrorist activities, insurrection in some part of the sub-region. You had insurrection. You had people trying to topple government, and like you rightly said, the issue of coup d'etat, which is an indication of instability in the governance structure of West African countries. Now you are aware that the ECOWAS has a protocol, that is the ECOWAS Protocol on Good Governance and Democracy, and one of the essential stipulations of that protocol is that no one takes over the running of a government in any West African country except through the provisions of that country's constitution. In other words, you cannot assume power through any other means except those means that are stipulated by the constitution of your country. So if anybody comes, to stage a coup or in any other manner assume leadership of that country, it is the position of ECOWAS that such a person or authority would not be given due recognition. And this was, also reiterated in examining all the country reports that, that we had. And of course, on the issue of insecurity, it is the general belief that we have to do more. Almost all the countries today have commissions on small weapons and ammunition and trying to prevent proliferation of same in the West African sub-region. But there's a need for synergy amongst all these countries so that our borders will be more effectively monitored, even though there is a lot of clamor for freer movement of our goods and persons across the borders. A lot of countries have shut their borders, which is hampering the economic growth of sister countries. All these issues are addressed, and then we're trying to see how do we maintain a balance between the need to ensure freer movement of goods and persons in the sub-region and the need to have secured borders where people don't use the opportunity of free movement to bring in illicit weapons and drugs and some other things. So these are some of the major issues that have dominated the discussion so far, especially in the country reports that were presented on the floor of the plenary in this session of the ECOWAS Parliament.
Senator Kepe, are you concerned? I mean, from what Honorable Amdele said, look, the country reports basically had similar thing: insecurity, economic challenges, instability, all in the same region. Are you concerned that the region is moving towards some serious state of instability, that if care is not taken, it's going to go beyond what this region can manage? Are you concerned?
Well, thank you. I think I'm concerned, and even more concerned. And I think the sub-region is concerned as well. Considering the different activities that are taking place in the sub-region, looking at constitutional reforms, for example, what unfolded in the Ivory Coast, of course, Guinea. These are all situations that was marked by electoral violence. You look at the issue about what is currently happening in Mali. And we are now talking about we are in Nigeria, taking cue from our own experience as Liberian. When we started our situation, it was ECOMOC through the support of the Nigerian contingent and the rest of the West African brother that were able to give Liberia today a success story. And so when you're talking about the situation in terms of insecurity that is going across West Africa, Liberia has had its own experience. And our experience reminds us that we need to be concerned because our neighbors, if you talk about the situation that went on in Ivory Coast, of course in Guinea, these are situations that trouble us because we share a common border. Coming to ECOWAS, as we review the different country reports, as we interacted with the president of the commission, and all of the information pointed to insecurity. And it had different dimensions. We're talking about insecurity as it relates to constitutional reform, insecurity as it relates to the military takeover in Mali, insecurity as it relates to internal issues. For example, in Nigeria, you have issues about kidnapping, you have issues about other internal security. And these things are things that worry us because in our own sub-region, when it comes to the military power, when it comes to the security support, Nigeria played a very significant role. And so I think where we are now is, in addition to receiving the report, we are now reviewing, holding specific conversations around what do we do. I am of an opinion that say, I think we are having these security issues. What do we do? I suggested in one of the plenary section, there's a need to have a security dialogue. There's a need to bring all of the security actors, the policy makers. Let's see where are we, so that together we can have one common front in approaching this matter. And I think as we think about that, that will find a way so that the policy maker will see what the issues are. The security experts will bring about what it is. Because in some of the country, there seems to be bad blood in the security sectors. I'll give you an example in my own country, where the military, the AFL was decommissioned, and there was a new military put together, trained. You have ex-service officers that still permeate within the society. I think these people with their expertise need to, how we work together to make sure that their expertise and the new military and the new security sector reform work together. We still get the security gap. And when ECOWAS were leaving for Liberia, for example, we have certain benchmarks that we should meet in terms of our security strength. Those are still gaps. So, owing to what is happening in other countries, I feel strongly that there's a need for a security dialogue. So we look at the reform, look at the issues, and see how we can work together more stronger in fighting these challenges.
Honorable Mr. beyond the state of insecurity in the sub-region, maybe we should go back to the basis when people are dissatisfied, when certain arms of government, maybe the executive, the military, the parliament, when people are not happy with government or with governance. Even here in Nigeria, we've had rumors of coup, and we've got the government saying, look, we're up to the task, nobody should dream about, because there is anger in the land. Why? Economic instability, problems, people finding it difficult to feed. Despite the enormous resources in the sub-region, the Africa and the sub-region is considered 30% home to the poor in the world. Yet we have resources. Are we looking at bad government and governance in the sub-region? Are we saying we've got leaders who are not actually leaders, who cannot manage the resources, and yet are impoverishing their people?
Well, absolutely. Governance issues are issues that must give concern to every well-meaning person, especially as leaders of our various countries in the legislature. We are very, very concerned about the issue of governance. Democracy should be a tool for development. When democracy does not engender development, where it does not result into development, there is bound to be frustration, there's bound to be threat. And one of the ways through which we can entrench the essence of democratic rule, birthing development, is to have greater inclusiveness in economic policies of various countries. For example, today at the Parliament there was the issue of the out-of-school children, where a special session was dedicated today to street children. Don't forget that Nigeria unfortunately has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world, some 13.5 million in number. In the sub-region we have close to 25 million out-of-school children. Now, a democracy that does not get access to education is a democracy that is breeding its own internal, weaknesses, internal failures, because it is only an enlightened, citizenry and educated populace that can play active role in the democratic process. So these are some of the issues that we believe as a parliament and as government of individual nations we should keep our focus on. Also, closely related to that is the need for countries in the sub-region to evolve mechanisms for reconciliation. Like I did say in one of my contributions yesterday, some of the problems that we have in most of these countries are result of traditional grievances. Some have lasted up to 5 decades, some up to a century, which have not been effectively addressed through a process of reconciliation. You have, a report in Ivory Coast, for example, when the former president, Laurent Gbagbo, had just been acquitted of charges of, being instrumental to the post-electoral violence that happened in that country in some years. He wants to return to the country, but you have people who felt, who felt bad, who felt, aggrieved by the role they assumed or they knew that he played in that time, still trying to resist his coming back to that country. Even though the government of that country has given the assurance, to ease the path for him to come back, you still have grievances in. So internally in most of our countries, Nigeria inclusive, we have a need for dialogue. We have a need to get people together around tables to discuss some of these grievances and find solutions to them. If we leave them unattended to, as we have done for so many years in Nigeria, for example, they tend to balloon into greater crisis. So the democracy itself is a process. It's a process which is more on engagement, on communication, on inclusiveness. If these things are missing, then unfortunately, no matter how much you sermonize, there will always be threats to the real essence of democracy in any country.
Threat to the real essence of democracy. Senator Kepe, you in Liberia, you all witness to what happened for several years, unresolved grievances, leaders not willing to come off their high horses to talk to the people. We saw what happened. Look, from Mali to Chad, to Niger, to Nigeria, the big brother, we are having unresolved grievances. We are having, in Nigeria, we have clamor for secession. We have all these talks going around, yet we have people in government who feel these are just some cheap talks. Are you concerned that, look, the sub-region may be going down the Liberia path if care is not taken? If government do not listen to their people, seriously concerned, are we heading towards the Liberia path?
Well, initially I would say no. And I would never wish for us to go down that path.
But are we?
As a sub-region. But let me go back to your previous concern about democracy, about governance. I think it comes with tendency. When we're talking about governance, it has its own tendency. We're talking about government by the people, for the people.
Yeah.
We're talking about government that will create the enabling environment, that will create the process of job creation, that will be able to meet up with the society in terms of its needs, that will utilize the resources entrusted into that government as a responsible government, that equitable distribution that will cut across the citizenry, respective of wherever they are, irrespective of wherever they are. And so, in the absence of these things, the issue of governance, the issue of whether it is good governance or governing itself is remaining a challenge. And so, until we can become more responsible as African leaders, until we can see beyond the horizon that there's a need for us to play the role that we should play, that people will have jobs, people will have education, people will have food on their table. That's the basis for any security in any nation. Once we can get to that, we'll be setting the first standard. As a relates to whether we get back to the Liberian experience, I hope not, because we have had a difficult experience.
But are we?
But
are we?
What is the situation now is we must wear the cap, holistic cap of reconciliation. We must be able to be intentional to know, first of all, what is our problem. We're talking about insecurity. That's one aspect. We're also talking about what caused insecurity. What are those things that led to crisis? In my country, for example, some of the things that led to the decade of civil war crisis, that we lost more than 250,000 citizens, was about good or bad governance. It was about corruption. And these things must be told. We must be able to remind ourselves that these are things that we must deviate from if we must move forward. And I think the Liberian experience has seen to me and to many people that we need to sit around the table. I mean, we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that were able to document some of the issues. We're still struggling to see whether we implement those things. Many times in our sub-region, when issues are brought out, when research are done, when people go and put money and resources into things like the Truth and Reconciliation, like other ventures that we're supposed to adhere to, sometimes we still find it as a challenge. And so for the sub-region not to go back to that path, first is to see how we who are at the ECOWAS Parliament, how do we organize a section that specifically deals towards security issues? What are causing these issues? How do we move into it? Instead of sending only commissioners that are responsible for good governance or for security, how do we set up specialized institutions, collaborate, and get to the bottom of this issue, visit individual countries, talk to the civil society, talk to the civil actors, so that together we'll get a deeper understanding and apply a holistic approach. I think that's the way to go.
All right, that's the way to go. I do agree with you. 1 minute, sir, or in fact in 20 seconds, I just need you to answer this question. What led to the crisis, the civil war in Liberia, that claimed more than 250,000 lives in that small tiny country? Bad governance, corruption, regional dissatisfaction with national level operations. Are we having the same in the country, in the region today? Has it gone away, or have they gone away?
You know, they have not gone away. And one thing I just want to quickly pick from what he said was the fact that we spend money and institutional effort to have institutions to have results which we don't follow through. For example, the product of the Nigerian conference, the national conference that was held during the Jonathan era, is a document that I think the Nigerian government should look at. The same thing in most other countries. You have a whole commission of truth and reconciliation in this country bringing out a report which government has not even implemented up to 10% of it as we speak.
I'm sorry, Honorable, I may have to cut you
so
short
good,
because of our time. It's an interesting discussion, but I don't think this is going to be the last discussion. If the sub-region is thrown into chaos, we will not be here today. My producer just told me that we may have to continue the discussion for some time more to come. Probably we may have to discuss with the ECOWAS Parliament. We need to actually continue to look at issues happening in the region. This is not going to be the last discussion. We may have to bring you back next week to continue and then have a deeper discussion, proper discussion with the ECOWAS Parliament on how to engage our people in this discussion. But today, I may have to bring this to an end. Thank you so much for joining us, Senator Kepe Lambert, the Liberian delegate at the ECOWAS Parliament, and Honorable Del Nigerian delegate at the ECOWAS Parliament. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you, it's been a privilege, and we hope we can have more
We are
time.
showing our viewers at home. We are not ending discussion. We'll be coming back to review the sub-region again next week, and please do join us. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Stay out of COVID.